Tonight, Kenya is at a trilemma. On one end, citizens want development. On the other, they do not want to be taxed anymore. And on the other bit, they also want to manage cost of running the country, which now pushes the country into what we know as austerity measures. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are gathered at University of Nairobi to discuss the effect of austerity measures on our economy and on essential services like healthcare, education, and other services that are most necessary to you and myself as citizens of this country. My name is Brian George Otieno, a business reporter at NTV and a global moderator. I'm joined by just the panel to discuss this conversation at Nairobi University, of course, as I've mentioned, and most importantly, we'll be celebrating Transparency International's 25 years of impact in these areas and so many more. We have quite the panel, just as I've mentioned, and we have a live audience of students, activists, civic society who are gathered here tonight to discuss with us. And we extend an invite to you, the viewer at home, to also be part of this conversation at NTV Kenya, at Brian George KE. This will be the beginning of that conversation. My sign language interpreter is Gideon Maina. We take it away at this point. The Finance and Investment Director at Transparency International, George Kiondo, is here with us. He will be introducing himself and telling us what he is about. And of course, the Executive Director of Budgeti Hub, Dr. Abraham Muriu Rugo, is also here with us. Perhaps, gentlemen, I'll just give you an opportunity for quick introduction, 30 seconds each, to tell us what your various firms are about, and then we'll just kick off the conversation. George, I'm going to start with you.
Once again, good evening. My name is George Kiondo. My background is finance and accounting, and I work for TI. Quite a bit of experience in NGO sector. Worked with donors, and this evening, our TI is fighting corruption. That's our motto. Actually, that's our vision: making the world corruption free. That's what we do on a daily basis, and all the programs that we conduct and we implement are geared towards that goal. We may probably not be very well known in the market, but that's what we do. Gradually, we are gaining prominence and taking our space. Thank you.
Dr. Ruga.
Thank you very much. I work and lead very active team of young Kenyans at Budgeti Hub. And our work is simple, is to join Kenyans in engaging with how their money is being spent. Because every shilling, every dollar that is spent in this country is your money, is our money. We pay taxes through the different forms. So Budgeti Hub exists to encourage and to help citizens to collaborate, to come together, to be able to pull, because no one force can fight and can push everything. Then to engage. We think that coming together is good, but then it must result in action. So engaging with the different issues that need to be engaged with the different institutions, but ultimately to transform our country, because we believe that this is where we are, sisi ndio tuko. And therefore, we have to make the best of the resources that we have, as our constitution would say, for the current and for the future generations. So that's what Budgeti Hub exists to do. And we are glad when we see everybody interested in how every shilling is spent. Thank you.
Great. Tonight is about accountability. Tonight is about governance and the best way to take our country. And allow me to start with you, Dr. Rugo, on this question. Perhaps just taking stock of the recent austerity measures that have been announced, how do these measures have an effect on delivery of essential services, particularly to marginalized communities?
Thank you very much. I think, and I hope as we proceed, I think we can be able to unpack some of these things. So whenever you think about the word austerity or the language of austerity, we are talking about cutting budgets. And cutting budgets that have already been there or already been approved. So you remember that the austerity measures that have been instituted came as a result of saying that, for every budget you have the expenditure side, or things that you need to spend on. and you have the revenue side. So when the revenue side had a shortfall because of the rejection of the finance bill for 2024-2026 of give and take about 350 billion, then there needed to be certain actions. But let me be clear that this is not the first time the language of austerity is coming up. The language of austerity has been around. But the danger of austerity is that you simply cut budgets. And when you cut budgets, it means that, therefore, things that you had planned to spend on, so for instance, you had planned to expand the coverage of immunization, then it means you will not do that. Yeah. You had planned to expand the coverage of education, then you will not do that. You have planned to expand, to build certain roads, complete certain projects, then you will not do that. But the austerity question in Kenya is interesting because what has been the bigger challenge is not what you cut of the budget you have, but what you actually do away that you are doing that is not necessary. Let me give you an example. So before even you come to saying that you need to cut 350 billion from your budget, you have about 248 state corporations. These are not ministries, these are not departments of government.
Some with overlapping roles.
Yes, many with overlapping roles. And therefore, you already have an expenditure that you are incurring. So of these 248, quite a number of them are actually not profitable. They are just consuming. So basically, it's like you have a bunch of shops, retail, and wholesale and different others, but some of them bring no profit. But you keep putting in more money. And there are reports that have been done when you had the president saying, we need to do away with to dissolve about 47 of them. 47 is not a small number, there have been reports that have been done. So when you just go the austerity direction of saying we need to cut the budget that is currently being implemented, yet you have institutions that you actually do not even need to be in place. But having said that, what austerity was going to do and is going to do as currently is that it reduces the amount of money that is available for basic services. How much money are we talking about? Just go with me. So you have a budget of 3.9 trillion Kenya shillings. So let's bring it down. You have a budget of about 4,000 Kenya shillings. Of this budget of about 4,000 Kenya shillings, about 1,200 or thereabout is money that you are going to pay in public debt. That is if you roll over, because there's another amount of about 600 shillings, which you have a choice to pay or not to pay, in the sense that you can roll it over. It's capital. So your capital, you can roll it over to the following year. Already, that means that you already almost half your budget is already taken by public debt. Then you add pensions. Then you add statutory spendings, like constitutional offices. By the time you have removed all that, you actually realize that out of every 100 shillings of tax collection, 70 shillings, about 72 shillings, and I see a couple of my colleagues here, about 72 shillings is already being spent on sorting out public debt of your ordinary revenue. So ordinary revenue, by the way, is not the 3.9. The ordinary revenue is actually about 2,500. Because it's not the whole amount that we are talking about. So if you have 2,500 of money you expect as your salary, but already 1,800 is being spent on debt, then you have 700 shillings. Then of these 700 shillings, you reduce. I hope you get what I'm saying. Then it starts meaning that actually you will not have drugs in hospitals. You actually are not going to have, so you had the discussion about, you're not going to employ teachers, for instance, that you need for your junior secondary school. You're not going to expand the infrastructure for junior secondary school. You're going to cut on agriculture services, yet you say agriculture is the backbone of the economy of the country. But lastly, is that by cutting what gets consumed by government, remember, in every country, government is the highest consumer, government and government institutions are the highest consumer in that economy. whether you are thinking about, consumer of even goods like newspapers that the national media will produce, whether you are thinking about fuel, the number of cars by government, that consume that fuel, whether you are thinking about rental space, whether you are thinking about consumables, food, all these items. What that starts to do, then it starts affecting the household businesses that supply these items. And later on we can talk about, and remember, all this discussion I'm having is if you are holding corruption constant, assuming there is no corruption, assuming there is no inflation of costs. So that's how austerity then plays out. So that by the time you have fully implemented austerity, especially if you do not have an accompanying program of economic stimulus, then it means that basically ni kutoa unatoa. You're just removing money from areas of spending, which affects, and in Kenya right now, when you don't spend at the level that you're spending, then it means that, first of all, the pending bills are increasing. So yes, and these are by micro, small, and medium enterprises, as it were, different business. So basically, that's what austerity has meant and will mean as we move forward, especially if our revenue does not grow, so in terms of the income that we are getting does not grow, and then we continue spending at the same levels. And we can come back to perhaps what we can do. But that's what exactly it means right now. Kenyans being pushed much more and having to spend more from their pockets without necessarily a return.
Great, thank you for laying premise there. I'm going to bring you back on tax expenditure later on and how that is also impacting tax revenues. But let me bring in George. What Dr. Rugo, displays is quite a grim picture of what austerity measures could potentially do to a society. And if, for example, say now healthcare is being affected, then it means, Brian, as myself, I have to go back to my pocket to chuck this money and afford healthcare. But sometimes when incomes are also not commensurate to the needs, I'm talking about at a household level, then it becomes expensive. I'm driving towards inequality, George. How do you think these austerity measures are widening the inequality gap in our society today?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Now, the issue around austerity measures has been brought out very well. Yeah. And now we're coming to how do they affect? Now, I think two issues here. One, that money that the government collects, because government has two major sources of revenue. One is taxation, and the other is donations. Through grants, you apply for, and loans, they sit in that category. Now, taxation has a historical element. Way back, even from the Bible, we had issues around taxation. Look at our forefathers when we were fighting for independence for this country. The Mau Mau War was being financed by business people who are actually paying taxes. Before it came to the Mau Mau War, the white man, the colonialists, was also taxing our great-grandfathers. For every hut you built, they said you should pay something to sustain government. So normally, governments are operated on collection of taxes. But for a long time, it's never bothered us. We've just been paying taxes faithfully and assuming that all is well. So you pay tax, you say the liability is gone, it's off my back. Then you work in the following month again, you pay taxes. But time has now come. Times have really changed. And change has been brought by issues around accountability. We want to hold somebody accountable for what they're doing with the taxes. So it's not just a question of you paying the tax. You also want to know what is that tax being used for, so that it can be used, you can benefit from it, because you realize it's an income that comes off your payroll, off your earnings. It goes to government. It's in the safe hands of governments, distributed across ministries, and then you expect services from those ministries, which again are not forthcoming. So austerity measures means we are still continuing to pay the taxes. Budget cuts are being put in place. We have issues around pending bills, because now our taxes are going to pay pending bills at the expense of our rights, or what we should be getting, the benefits that we should be accruing from the taxes that we pay. So we find ourselves in a catch-22. We are the ones paying the taxes to run government, but then we are not benefiting from it. So the austerity measures are really hurting us negatively, I would say, because the government wants to increase the taxes. Taxes increase means our pockets are going to be taxed more. The disposable income that we have in our homes, in our homestead, if you're buying a kilo of sugar, then it means you start buying 3/4 a kilo per week because you can't afford it. You're working very hard, rolling up your sleeves, but things are not working out. So your income is diminishing because the amount of taxation is increasing. So there's what I would call, there's lack of equilibrium. There's no equilibrium. Nothing is balancing. So we feel pinch. You start feeling the pinch. And once you start feeling the pinch, then you start realizing, hey, somebody owes me an explanation of how my taxes are being utilized. And that's what has given rise to the finance bill, because every year, the finance bill is brought before the House. I've not seen a lot of participation by the citizens around it. But this time, there was. Parliament still passed it despite the protests. But eventually, the president in his wisdom had to reverse it because he saw things were getting hot. So, Wananchi had spoken. Led by the Gen Zs, the world has spoken. Kenya had spoken that we are getting tired of the increment in taxes. We know what our parliamentarians do. They will get small kickbacks and pass anything that they are given. So that has now become a pain. And that's why the parliamentarians found themselves in a very hot soup. At some point, even the ones who have flags had to hide the flags. They were no longer mheshimiwas. It was not honorable to be mheshimiwa again because you are compromised. So that's what I would say in my opening remarks. Thank you.
Great. Let me bring in Dr. Rugo now as we sort of lay the premise for our next point, but we have a short break coming up shortly, about 3 minutes. Do you possibly think we have enough transparency around tax issues in our country? One, in disclosures of how much has been collected, and secondly, in what has been spent where and how it is working for us. Briefly before we go on a short break, and then we'll bring you back on this accountability versus taxation.
Thank you. First of all, I think it's important to note that we have made major steps. I did note that I've been in the space perhaps long to see this. We've moved from big books to online data. So we've made big steps in terms of being able to get, collections, exchequer releases, how much the Treasury has actually, how much KRA has collected. But what we do not have is that we still do not have how much of, say, what you call tax expenditures, how much of rebates are given, how much of reliefs are given, to whom they are given, and how much the country benefits versus these reliefs that it gives. Secondly, we also do not have a good indication of how much tax actually should be collected from who. And the reason for that is that we still have a huge part of our income group considered informal. So it's not registered. So when you look, for instance, at the number of people who do tax returns and who actually pay tax, I think we're still below 3 million people. Yeah. And that means, therefore, that, and yet we have a workforce of about 20 million, thereabout, give and take. So that's where we still do not have a lot of visibility. And I know that touches on Kenyans because they are like, so why should I be paying taxes? Why should I even declare, how much I own, I earn to be able? Thirdly, while we get information, we seem to get a lot of the information around how much tax is being collected at the last quarter. You remember the anticipation that was there as the financial year was coming to an end, where many of us were thinking, based on the trends, we are likely to have a huge miss of the targets, only for so much of the information to be released on the last quarter, of the financial year, and therefore that very, yet it should be such that at any point you should be able to click. At the click of a button, you should be able to see how much do we have in income tax. you should even be able to see who actually is paying this tax, and the like. So those are some, but to note that we have made significant progress in transparency. There's still a lot, and we can talk about the other side of tax, whether you think about, how fair the distribution of that tax is, how much of that tax is quite very regressive. We can talk about that. I don't know how many minutes I have, because I want to say something on inequality. Okay, good. Allow me to say something on inequality, because inequality is the gap between the highest earning person and the least earning. That difference, And what happens in an economy like Kenya is that inequality is largely driven by the very limited distribution of incomes. So when you have 10 shillings, the question is, what helps to sort out the 10 inequality in an economy is whether these 10 shillings remains in my pocket or moves to George, to Brian, and to Esther, and to Simon, and the like. So what you have is that you have a few who are accumulating a lot. They are not necessarily investing, or we are not necessarily investing in income and employment creation opportunities. Therefore, you have a few holding a lot of money, and then you have a majority to whom money is not going to, which basically increases. Remember, as George has said, these people are still paying taxes. Yeah. Because whether you borrowed the money, whether you fulized or whatever you did, when you went and bought a product, that product has tax. So in other words, you are still contributing to the economy in as much as you are not benefiting from incomes within that economy. Thanks.
Great. In case you're joining us right now, we are at a town hall discussing the effect of austerity measures on key services to the citizens of the country. And definitely, we will be picking questions from our live audience here in Nairobi University. Right about now, we're going to take a short break. Before we come back, we're going to be back here with conversations on taxation and accountability. You don't want to miss this. At NTV Kenya, at Brian George KE is where it's at on Twitter. Please talk to us. We take a short break. We'll be back with more. Don't go too far.
Sikia, ni juicy. Flavor zote tamu tena fruity. Are you bored? Kuna vitu Ayaya kituka na shika. Yummy ina flow kama maji tena fruity. Are you bored? Kuna vitu moja juni tamu kama sali. Ni juicy. Flavor zote tamu tena fruity. Are you bored? Kuna vitu zinakuudhi, sijali my bro, hebu kama taka juicy. Ni juicy. Flavor zote tamu tena fruity. Are you bored? Kuna vitu zinakuudhi, sijali my bro, hebu kama taka juicy juni.
New Downy Perfume Collection. Sometimes I need a scent to keep me calm amongst the chaos, or a light fragrance that keeps me fresh in the heat, or a perfume that feels elegant all day and into the night, lasting longer than expensive perfumes. New Downy, lavender calm, sunrise fresh, and sweet elegance. Freshness that inspires confidence. Your dreams have come true. Try it for only 20 shillings. This is the comfort of a mom's hug. Nahi ni Morphix diapers. Comfy like a mom's hug. Baby's drink is gloop. Morphix absorbs like whoop. Macoffee to both baby and the new Morphix diapers. With its cottony soft texture and 3 times faster absorbent channels, the new Morphix diapers help to prevent rush. Morphix, comfy like a mom's hug.
Are you ready?
Kona moja mbele, ngine yende rembe. Kona moja mbele, ngine yende rembe.
Kwa sherehe tumefika.
Lete kingari ni kuseti ya kifwaka. Niko na dem, mwenye kona dem pia. Masa flani ekifika na wachangamkia. After scene kabaridi sezi nkatulia.
Tunakubali. Tika. katika kila mtu.
Cash pop za Nyandarua ni mawaru.
Only on NTV.
The Trend, brought to you by the Year Account from Cooperative Bank.
Get that money, better save that money, alafu. Yeah, yeah. Lazima tutafute, tukafunge. Yeah, yeah. Lazima jipe, na sio kesho.
Make it happen right now, not yeah.
Welcome back. In case you're joining us just now, we are live from the University of Nairobi, where we're having a town hall on the effects of austerity measures on key government services that are targeted towards the people. Allow me now to give a chance to one of our panelists to introduce herself. She just joined us, Diana Gishengo from TISA. Please, 30 seconds for introduction so that our guests and our audience can know you.
Thank you very much. My name is Diana Gishengo. I am a Kenyan active citizen, taxpayer, and currently the executive director, the Institute for Social Accountability, TISA, that works on, among many other things, including social accountability, public debt management. My apologies for coming late. I think it is part of the gendered effects of the high public debt and over taxation.
Thank you for that. We needed a nice breaker. A lot of English, tough words, numbers, and serious conversation going on, yet the weekend is just a few hours away. Let me bring back George. And George, we're still talking about transparency, and Dr. Rugo gave quite an account of just how much of progress we've made as a country in exposing, in disclosures of how much taxes we have collected, what kind of spend plan we have. What, in your experience as a finance expert, how do other countries that are worth benchmarking from doing it so that we can also borrow from them, borrow a leaf from them, and make our disclosures better, our transparency better, because that's what we're here for tonight?
Thank you for that question. I think I said previously that taxation is not new. I don't know that we have BCom students here. They actually have a unit called taxation. So they learn taxation, and they have the tools that Caesar uses to tax Kenyans. So the Bible says, give unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Now, I think we've grown out of that statement. We have outgrown it. We have outgrown that statement in the sense that it's not just a question of giving Caesar.
Caesar will take.
Caesar will take by whatever method. You go to supermarkets, whatever you buy, there's a VAT component in it. So you like it or you don't like it, you still have to pay taxes to government. Now, the issue is around accountability. And this is where we don't seem to get it right as a nation. This is where the challenge lies. This is the elephant in the room. And this is the $1 million question for all of us tonight. How do we spend the taxes that we collect? There's government spending. There's what we would like the government to spend on, our priorities, and what government ought to do with the taxes that they have not done. So you have to balance those three issues. And there are countries to learn from, because the issue revolves around accountability. The moment you become accountable to what you're collecting, and the reports that you get are not discouraging. When you pick any auditor's report, the auditor's general report, because that's a source document of how government ministries are spending our taxes. You get any report from government, you get discouraged. In fact, you read page 1, page 2, you don't even go beyond page 3. Maybe the document is a 20-page document, but you don't want to go to page 3. you start feeling discouraged. You start pointing fingers. You start seeing the rot that is in our nation. You start asking yourself that hard questions. Why isn't the right action being taken? We have role models, other countries, particularly in Europe, that the people pay taxes and they're happy to pay taxes because their health care is taken care of. People pay taxes, the roads are good. People pay taxes, they get value for money for what they're paying. So they can actually see and hold the government accountable. But I don't know whether that's what we have in our nation here, and particularly around Africa. Historically, there are a lot of challenges if you look at the so-called third world, because we seem to have a common practice. It cuts across. I think one feature, I remember one time in college, and the lecturer actually said, let's define who a third world country is. And we were looking at the characteristics of third world countries. One of them was issues around taxation. The tax money is always stolen. And there's no action that is ever taken. Pick any country, go to West Africa, go to East Africa, go to South Africa. The story is the same. Another feature that I remember still very vividly is that our markets, we like selling things on the roadside because we believe that's where the customers are. You go to Nairobi, you go to Kampala, you go to Jerusalem, you go to whichever capital that you go to in Africa, you still find that. It's our practice. One time I went to China, and it was drizzling snow where we were standing. I was waiting for other Kenyans so we could go and do some little shopping. And when the taxi dropped me outside a building, I stood there. I waited for about 5 minutes, nobody came. But when the guys eventually came from the embassy, when they came to pick us, 5 meters away from where I was standing, when we opened the door, oh, it's a marketplace. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. You couldn't even hear the noise. That's a difference. So our taxation issues, accountability issues, is where the real issue is. If we can be accountable, we can hold government accountable. We can also be accountable. We demand for accountability from government. We hold the institutions accountable for whatever they're supposed to do. We hold KRA accountable for what they do. We hold the institutions that work around taxation issues. We hold them liable because that's where the gaps are. So money is transferred to the county governments. In fact, we have just devolved, we have devolved corruption. We've moved it from national level, we've now taken it to the counties. And that's what has happened to this nation. Thank you.
Diana, let me bring you in on this one now. The biggest issues in our budget deficits are normally how to plug that deficit. But even before we resolve to go and get debt financing, which, by the way, is also another different conversation. Perhaps if we afford the time, we're going to talk about tonight. Dr. Rugo spoke about tax expenditure. And expenditure in this sense that this is the taxes, these are revenues that are foregone because of waivers and incentives that are given to traders and manufacturers and the like. Just how much should be given so that we also don't kill these manufacturers who are crying and who are complaining about the tough business environment, but still be able to manage our deficits by cutting back on some of these tax expenditures. Because at the end of the day, it's way too much. Or staring at the numbers, perhaps you have them, being a research firm. Speak to us about that, managing these tax expenditures so that we also plug the deficits that we have occasionally in our budget.
Brian, tax expenditures, how we manage, who gets? You've said traders. Give me a Kenyan trader. Give me a Kenyan trader. And I work with traders. Medium, micro, small, and micro. Nobody has a tax expenditure. All of them are working every day to either duck KRA or install ATMs and become compliant. Remember that other, was it the ATR machine? That was very, very costly. All of them were working to get that. So first, as we speak about tax expenditure, let's evaluate who gets? Who is told, let us waive? We know all the controversies that existed during the Jubilee regime. Right now, speak to manufacturers. Who is getting those incentives in the steel industry, in the cement industry? Why are we choosing to grow one company and kill all the rest? When all the others die, we lose employment. But bottom line, and I hope this one has been stated, we do not have a revenue problem. We have enough money that is already collected. Based on that, and for us to actually grow the economy, maybe we need to lower the tax on the things where we are sure Kenyans are there in huge numbers, which is micro and small enterprises. And a bit of the medium, because most of the medium enterprises are 100% owned by Kenyan. If those ones, we don't even need reliefs. We just need to say, lipa tax here 10%. Don't do this high corporate tax. We will give them incentives to grow business, because where else can they go? They will bank in our Kenyan banks. They will borrow here. Before they import labor, the hassle of getting work permit is very, very high. So if we are to give tax expenditure, I don't know what, maybe somebody who was to say they are going to build us a space station, something very, very unique and so on. But all these companies that get tax expenditures, we can do this. And even our banking sector, our investors, our universities can come together. How many innovations have come out of universities from the science symposium? Kenyans have innovated. Walijenga ndege kwa hii Kenya. Were they given tax incentives to now become manufacturers? No. And find out, are those tax incentives just that? Or does somebody get a benefit indirectly? So I think first, they need to be published, done away with. Some of them are as old as colonialism. Somebody was given a tax incentive when they leased land in 1900. Is that the same consideration that we are using to say that they are still a unique enterprise that should not be paying tax? Our tax administration on tax expenditures is problematic. And most probably the people who are meriting are the wrong ones. If we just made business easy for any investor and to come and partner with Kenyans, we would be able to do business. Let us have the haggling of legal minds deciding on the tax administration, whether it is 2-3 states. Let's agree on, if that was a discussion, that would make sense. But tax expenditures, zianikwe tu. And you remember how Kenya Kwanza was very keen on tax expenditure, this merger, the foregone tax was this number of billions. All that is quiet. Now they want to tax everything that we have. Bottom line, we do not have an expenditure problem, but most importantly, it is time to rethink the entire tax incentives, tax waivers, and general administration. Because for an economy that is now getting into recession, and we are using, as we do that, we are saying, oh, austerity, as we kill on all industry, what do you want us to do? To come for handouts? All of us cannot be transported outside the country to work there. We must build employment here. And the many places, the people who get tax incentives, the people they employ are like 100. And the informal sector employs 80%
of the population. We do not have a single incentive. I'll come back to you on the effect of these austerity measures on gender and women issues. But you get why we needed Diane on this conversation? You appreciate it? Great. Dr. Rugo, let me invite you 2 minutes before you take the questions from the audience. I want us to speak about appropriations, which is what brought some of these things to the fore. in the run-up to the Gen Z protests. And I'm mentioning that here because Kenyans literally took the budget and scanned it, and they were like, why are we allocating this here, yet there is other pressing issues? Why is this office being allocated this much? Do you think that is one of the ways to expand and increase and enhance our transparency in spending of these taxes, just as George said, that we need to benchmark from other countries who are doing such? How do we work around those appropriations issues?
Thank you. First of all, appropriations is just a big word for spending. So that then I think we've introduced too many words: tax expenditures, appropriations, and it's spending. The truth of the matter is, you have a budget that, as I said, is about 4 trillion. You have, you have revenues, give and take, that will get you to about, give and take about 3 or so, 3.2. It was expected to be about 3.3, but now we'll land at about maybe 2.9 or thereabout. And the question has been, what are we spending on? I just gave an example, first of all, that we have all these institutions that we continue to bankroll that are not necessarily being of benefit. Of course, some of the ways to make sure that they are working are not necessarily perhaps, the right ones. Like giving a concession, for instance, for JKI to be operated, and it has been quite dramatic, in terms of, how we do. The interesting thing is actually that the Kenya Airports Authority has been actually one of the profitable institutions, by the way. And Kenya Airways has been a loss-making institution. But until recently, and there's a reason why until recently, because government absorbed its debts. But when you come to... Yes. Yes, Diana, we absorbed because before you came, I said it's our money. So yes, before we decided through our representatives to absorb all the pains and all the debts of. So there's that whole area of state agencies that are not necessarily giving us what we should. The second one is that we have a devolved system of government. And this is important. We have a national government, we have county governments. Those are the 2 levels that the Constitution that we gave to ourselves provides. But you still have a lot of other institutions that are in between these 2 institutions, not to mind the amount of duplication that is being done by the national government and the county government, so that you have a Ministry of Health that is spending almost twice, if not thrice, as much as all the health budgets of the counties, because the Ministry of Health, spends about 150 or thereabout billion. Counties get 400 billion in all their totality. Yet, a lot of the health service delivery is at the county level, or is a responsibility of county. And this is, level 1, the community health promoters, dispensaries, and health center. Thirdly, is the amount of money we spend to keep every employee of government. Whether you think about the per diems that they get, whether you think about the vehicles that rotate around that employee, whether you think about the multiple allowances that the outgoing SRC or the outgoing SRC has been trying to fight for a long time, the 233, if I'm not wrong, allowances, sitting, thinking, walking, talking, consulting allowance, all manner of allowances. Those are the areas where, if we do not address, and that's what I'm talking about, that if you don't address those ones give you, if you deal with those inefficiencies, they give you much more money than even what you are planning to raise by raising more taxes. So that then you still have money that you could make most use of within that space, as opposed to saying all we need is more money. All the time. And as Diana has said, really, we do not have a revenue problem, because our revenues have actually been growing at on average, 10% for the last 10 years. Very few of us have our incomes growing at 10% every year. Very few of us. Yes. But very few of us still, because there are just about 500, 600 of them. Thanks.
Dr. Rugo, we have about 8 more minutes to take a break. We were here for these young people. I'm going to give time for question and answer. Let me see. Dennis. Dennis, please pass me the microphone to... There's this gentleman over here. Yes, the one with the microphone. And then we're going to pick a few more. What's your question? Introduce yourself, direct it to one panelist so that we manage time. Real quick.
It's okay. Joel Muturu, Treasurer, St. Paul's University. And I have two pressing issues on corruption.
Very quickly.
And the first one is, how can an ordinary citizen hold their leaders accountable? How can a person in Amamaboga in Muranga County hold their leaders accountable and tell them, you stole my money, I didn't get medicines in hospital, my child never went to university because of the money that you stole? How can they do that? The second question is, what opportunities are there for civil servants and the media to expose corruption and fight corruption, and what measures are there to protect the whistleblowers? Thank you so much.
Great. Who are you channeling your questions to? Just one panelist, please, so that we manage time.
Yeah, the lead.
Diana Gishengo, there you go. And by the way, for the record, we invited government officials here to be part of this conversation. They never took part. I think that should be stated out there. Let's give a lady also an opportunity to ask a question. There's a lady at the back, yes. Introduce yourself, tell us what you do. Good evening.
My name is Sweetney Atieno. I'm a recent graduate.
Yeah.
My questions are, what mechanisms are currently in place to ensure accountability in the management of public resources? And the other questions, what are the main challenges in holding public officials accountable for mismanagement and misuse of public resources? Thank you.
Great. George, you could take those ones. Let me take one from this row as we continue the conversation. Those of us back at home, please reach us at NTV Kenya at Brian George KE. Let me recognize the presence of the Center of Fiscal Affairs, Stephen Osedo. Great to see you together with Kimberly and, of course, Irene Odhiambo. Let's hear from you.
Okay, my name is Sang Linda Chepkoech from the Strathmore Law School. And I want to direct my questions to Diana Gashenga, a person from Transparency International Kenya, and one from the Bajeti Hub. My first question goes to the one from Transparency International Kenya, where my question is, how can you ensure that austerity measures are implemented transparently and equitably, and what strategies do you recommend for monitoring their impact on service delivery? The second question is to you, Diana. In your experience, what are the most effective ways to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor through public accountability mechanisms? And how can TISA initiatives address deep-rooted inequalities encabareted by austerity measures? And the last question to the Bajeti Hub, what role can civil society, organizations, and marginalized groups play in influencing public spending, and how can Bajeti Hub support these groups in advocating for more equitable allocation of resources? Yeah.
Great. Allow the panelists to respond to those ones. We take a short break, then they come back, we respond to more. Diana, you want to go first?
Thank you very much, comrades. Actually, it is my daughter who has misled me. Nilikuwa nimevaa nini bandana yangu ya maandamano next. Imeandikwa funga wezi usikope.
Usikope. No, we don't want tear gas here.
No,
anyway.
That is not, it is more of civic space and the spaces we have to hold people to account. And one of the messages that we want to pass as the Okwauchumi Coalition is, before we speak about anything else, it needs to be very clear. Because we do not have a revenue problem, when money is being used, it is stolen. I was thinking about my mother tongue and whether there is a name called corruption misappropriation. Pesa either hupotea ama inaibiwa. Ikipotea unaiokotanga. Unaambiwa pesa iliyopotea tuliipata hapa. Hatujapata pesa yenye ilikuwa imepotea ikaokotwa. So ile pesa ambayo imepotea Kenya imeibiwa. Watu ambao wanaiba pesa ni kina nani? Wanaitwa nani? Wezi. Si ndio? What do our laws, our customs, our religion say about thieves? They should be arrested, jailed, and they return everything that they stole. Please, that is the message that we must take to every single village. And luckily, we are the Institute for Social Accountability. What Kenyans have been doing lately is what we must all do. We, the citizens, we, the taxpayers, we, the debt owners, we, the ones who have redeemed Kenya Airways by taking over their debt, are the most important people in asking questions. If you're able to mobilize your networks the way Morara Kebaso is doing, or when Dr. Rugo here releases a report and everybody shakes that now the thieves have been exposed, please use your avenues like that. If you come together in a village and you decide to start writing near every notice board of the church, okay? Or I come from a T-zone, of the tea buying centers, that is where we go for notices in my village, that we need the MCA to answer for this particular expenditure. Go and ask the governor, the member of parliament, all the questions. We are aware this contractor came. The road we hear ought to have been this thick. You have seen roads that are 1.2 meters. Write about it. Document. Speak in every single forum. We must stop being the receivers of rules and information and be the ones that are setting the agenda. If this had happened, Brian, say, in May, you would have thought we are speaking in a scholarly way. But we have seen the practicality of it.
Yeah.
When everybody decided to engage their MP, something started to shift. If we all start publicizing every single project in our area and auditing it and becoming involved, then something will start to shift and the culture will become different.
Great. Diana, allow me to give the highlights for what people should expect at 9 p.m. tonight. In case you're joining us just right now, we are at UON for the conversation, a town hall on austerity measures and how it is affecting you and I in getting government services. Let me now give you the highlights of what you should expect at 9 p.m. tonight on NTV. Then we'll be back with this conversation. Don't go too far.
Ngozi yako ina glow. Nilijipaka mafuta leo asubuhi nikikam, lakini skin yangu ishaparara and it looks so dull.
Sis, see, it's the new Nice and Lovely Lemon Extract Body Lotion.
Hiyo ndo secret yangu to a moisturized and bright skin. Usimix.
New Nice and Lovely Lemon Lotion, enriched with vitamin C and sunflower seed oil for 48-hour nourishing glow and brighter skin. Try Nice and Lovely Lemon Lotion today.
Usiachwe nyuma. Join us at the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon. Register by visiting www.nairobimarathon.com and help us move Kenya forward. Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon. Run, embrace possibility.
And we need 2 Royco cubes Because iron gives you strength to sukuma yourself to be the best you can be.
Jisukume na roiko, kula sukuma na roiko, sukuma wiki na roiko.
Ngozi yako ina glow. Nilijipaka mafuta leo asubuhi nikikam, lakini skin yangu ishaparara and it looks so dull.
Sis, see, it's the new Nice and Lovely Lemon Extract Body Lotion. Hiyo ndo secret yangu to a moisturized and bright skin. Usimix.
New Nice and Lovely Lemon Lotion, enriched with vitamin C and sunflower seed oil for 48-hour nourishing glow and brighter skin. Try Nice and Lovely Lemon Lotion today.
Is Dove better than ordinary soap? We're going to prove it. Take a bar of your soap and Dove. Use yours on one side, Dove on the other. The soap part feels rough. The Dove side is softer, smoother, and more radiant. With 1/4 moisturizing cream, Dove deeply nourishes for radiant skin all over. Try Dove and feel the difference.
This is the comfort of a mom's hug. Nahi ni Molfix diapers. Comfy like a mom's hug. Baby's drink as gloop. Molfix absorbs like whoop. Macoffee to both baby and the new Molfix diapers. With its cottony soft texture and 3 times faster absorbent channels, the new Molfix diapers help to prevent rush. Molfix, comfy like a mom's hug.
This is NTV.
Tonight.
Nilipata damu imetapakaa na mzee ako chini, kuingia huko nayo jikoni, the same case, walukira ako chini, the pool of blood.
Octogenarian and his 56-year-old daughter hacked to death. By whom and why? Police in Nyeri combing alleys to solve the twin murder puzzle. Also tonight.
Kwa ukweli inaonekana kuna ugonjwa ambayo imejitokeza inaitwa rabies ambaye inakuanga ya umbo, lakini kama imeshika hivyo fisi na ndio amekuwa hatari sana.
Rabid hyenas terrorizing Juja residents. Residents protest after a 5-year-old is mauled to death. The risk of domestic animals contracting rabies is rife. Plus,
iliingia kwa DCI, lakini sasa serikali hawakuchukulia kwa haraka ili kumuokoa.
Did police failure to act on gender-based violence reports cost Ugandan athlete her life? Family of Rebecca Cheptegei is adamant. And
Ruto has rendered Rigathi Gachagua politically and administratively irrelevant.
The possibility could be that Gachagua and Ruto are playing as games.
DP Rigathi Gachagua in unfamiliar territory, or is he? We tell you why power is evading the second in command. Politics and power tonight.
Usiachwe nyuma. Join us at the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon. Register by visiting www.nairobimarathon.com and help us move Kenya forward. Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon. Run, embrace possibility.
This is NTV.
Great, and we are on at UON speaking on austerity measures and how they're affecting your services and how they're delivered to you, taxation and accountability likewise. We have a live audience in this town hall. My panelists were just responding to some of the questions they had asked earlier on. Diana, do you have any question that was still pending? Do you want to respond to?
Very briefly, what are the opportunities and mechanisms for whistleblowing? They do exist, and whistleblowing in Kenya, you can do it overtly or covertly. Where you do not feel safe, you can either whistleblow through a media outlet, EACC, the Auditor General, COB, all those have whistleblowing mechanisms. You can whistleblow through institutions that have more muscle to take it up, and you can whistleblow openly, especially where it is around expenditure and you feel you have a community that protects you. And in this era, your facts can really, really support. So that is available, and whistleblowers are not very well protected overall in this country. There's currently a whistleblowing bill in Parliament. There's just basic witness protection. So that is something we will need to agitate. Mm-hmm. Finally, what are the most effective ways of addressing inequalities? First, austerity measures have never helped anything inequality. If you hear austerity measures, know we are deepening inequality. Austerity measures mean government will no longer pay as much for health. They will no longer pay as much for education. When that happens, have we seen what has happened to the higher education model?
Yeah.
The poor are going to become poorer. The most important thing, all I'll say is we must stop bad manners in expenditure. When you are serving food and you're in a good-mannered community, able-bodied men and women eat less and eat after the elderly, the children, the weakling, and everything else. In Kenya, able-bodied men and women, the rich ones, eat before and eat a lot. We must stop that gluttony if we are to address inequality. Yeah.
Dr. Rugo, your responses.
So first of all, thanks a lot. I was asked a very straightforward question. How can we enhance accountability? How can we ensure that communities are able to engage better? What we have been doing is that in each county in this country, we have a person called a budget facilitator, and if you go to budgetyhub.org, you'll get some of the details of that. What we've done is to make sure that we have trained people, and we are continuing to train through different processes, virtual trainings. Some of them will be coming up actually very shortly. When you see it, please join in. And all this is just giving you an opportunity to understand three things. One, how much money has been allocated for what? Which department is responsible for that amount of money? And in case you have any questions, who would you need to ask? Because some of the questions we ask the national government are actually questions we should be asking our governors and our MCAs. Some of the questions we ask our MCAs and our governors are questions actually we should be asking the national government and the members of parliament at the national level. Because, and then secondly, is to say, once you understand those three things, all of us here are English literate. And I want to emphasize that word, English literate, because illiteracy is not a factor of not understanding English. There are many people who are literate, they don't understand English, but they know their issues. They know what affects them. They know when resources are not being spent well. They know a bad bridge and a good bridge. They don't need to be engineers. They know a good road. They know a road that can fit a car and a road that cannot fit a car. We know when we are walking on a bridge, we can fall in, and a bridge that is comfortable. We are not illiterate. That continuous learning by ourselves and speaking. And I keep saying this, guys, even if you do not know the answer, let nobody fool you that you can only engage in these discussions when you have a solution. That's why we pay government officials. That's why we have people who are employed to think about these things. Ask the questions. Ask the question as to why this road is chipping after it was fixed last week. You don't need to have a solution you don't need to be an engineer. Ask why water is not coming, yet the pipes were fixed just a month ago. Yeah. Ask why this facility that was opened last month now does not have a nurse, does not have drugs, imekuwa nyumba ya kuku. Those are questions. Ask them. Let the person who is responsible, and if you don't know who to ask, two people. your member of parliament, and your MCA as a starting point. Let them escalate it to whichever level. So I think that's the way to, and the more of us are asking questions, the more the spokesman of the government now says they are going to go and check those projects and see what is going on. Because when we ask questions, it means we are alive, we are woke to the realities of what is happening. Thanks.
Great. George, before we take the next round of questions.
Yeah, two questions from Joel. One, how can a Mamboga be made to account, to get the leader accountable? I think that was a question. Yeah, quickly, I can say the issues revolve around capacity building by the citizenry. We are the ones who elect these people. We have leadership at national level, and we had leadership at parliament level, then we have leadership at the county level. These three, how do we manage them? By Mamboga. Probably in your jurisdiction where you stay, you have an MCA. He needs to be engaged. I think when he was campaigning, he brought out certain issues that he wants to implement. Now, how regularly does he meet the Mambogas? How regularly does he meet the residents who elected him? How do we hold him accountable? Is he delivering? Yes or no? Your MP, how regularly do you meet him? Are there structures or frameworks that allow us to engage with our MPs? If there aren't any, how can we force them to be there? Do we have mechanisms of telling the MP that as we elect you, we should be meeting you every quarter? Or every 2 months, we have a baraza, public baraza, like the chief. Or when the chief holds a public baraza, the MP should come.
Yeah.
The area MC should come. Then we can ask the hard questions. You promised 1, 2, 3. We've not seen anything like this. In fact, the last time we saw you is when we elected you. After that, you disappeared. You went to stay in Nairobi.
Yeah.
Because these guys are known to stay in Nairobi for 5 years.
Yeah.
The last year to the elections, that's when they remember, oh, I was elected. I need to go back home and start amassing votes and start buying the votes. Some of them will even have the audacity to say, it's my money that I used. They'll say it.
Nowadays they come.
And we are the recipient.
Nowadays they come home every December with football tournaments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those are the challenges. So we as a citizenry, we've also this thing around waves during elections. We have this party that has swept all of us, so we dive into it. Without critically evaluating the individuals.
Yeah.
They may not necessarily belong to the party that is popular, but they are leaders. And they have promised tangible things, and we have known their character. We've studied them over a period of time, and we know who they really are. But we never do that. Every 5 years, it's a wave. This year, it's Jubilee. Anybody wearing Jubilee colors gets to parliament. Anybody, the following year, it is URP. Anybody with URP colors, ndani. Tunaanguka na yeye. So I think that culture needs to change, gentlemen. As we go into 2027, we must change that culture. Let's evaluate these people we're electing. Do they have a manuscript? What are they promising? What is their character? If you lift the veil, whom do you see? Who is the real person? Who is that real guy behind when you lift the veil? Is he a credible person? Does he stand? What has his character showed for the last probably a given period of time? Is he consistent? What are his leadership qualities? How does his family, if any that he has, look? How is he upheld? What is his character? What are his moral values? Those are the things that we go that direction, we get it right.
Great. Let me, in the interest of inclusivity, allow me to ask one of our sisters here to ask a question, and she will be assisted by Gideon Maina, who is a sign language interpreter, just to ask her question. Yeah, Gideon will ask on her behalf. It's okay, proceed. Proceed, you're audible. Yeah.
Okay, to my question. It's on specific on tax. I just want to ask one thing. Let us not ask on austerity measures only, but we see the way to reduce tax on people that makes and make our country equal and fair to help us reduce corruption. You know, our leaders of today are so arrogant. So how do we make sure, how do we make them stop corruption? On what avenues do we channel our grievances to make sure the corruptions comes down? On what ways? Because we all know tax collection is important to our country. Do we have any structured or any strategy to make sure we hold them accountable and make Kenya a fair country on where we tax people based on their income and not really suppress the poor? And we have the courts, we have the government, the national government, and the parliament. But sometimes the government and the national government are very corrupt, but the courts are the one covering the corruption. So which are the structures and which are the avenues that we as citizens can use to bring them to book and make sure we reduce the corruption and not only the austerity measures?
Great. Thank you, Gideon, for that assistance. Let me have the gentleman again. It's okay. Proceed.
I'm Jabez.
Yes, Jabez.
I have 3 questions, very quick. One, how do we fight the mtu wetu syndrome? Because that is a very big problem in our Kenyan system.
Okay.
2, we have very many accountability organizations and institutions in Kenya.
Okay.
We have the parliament, we have the auditor general. All these institutions are being funded by government, but they are doing nothing. 3, we have very many laws on accountability. We have the criminal justice system, we have the Anti-Corruption Act, we have the Economic Crimes Act, but nothing has been done. Is it a matter of enacting very many acts, of much ado about nothing?
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Let me have our panelists respond to those 2 sets of questions with their closing remarks. Dr. Rugo, are you ready to go with their closing remarks? And then we'll end it there. Proceed.
Thank you. Allow me to deal with the mtu wetu syndrome. I don't want to go to the history of this, but as you remember, a lot of the efforts that communities put in place when during that fight for independence was even contributing money to take some of their elite or the persons they considered elite to be able to go and fight for them. Go, first of all, be educated, then be able, education here meaning be English literate, arithmetic literate, and come and fight for them. But I think over time, and the mtu wetu syndrome really comes when people are fighting for survival, when they're endangered. When people feel endangered, they say, let's come together, even if there are many things we don't agree on. But this has now been translated to mean that it does not matter what means you use to get the money, so long as you come and bring it back, and so long as we have an association to your comfort. I think we are getting to a place where many of us are starting to appreciate that mtu wetu sio mtu wetu, hatuko pamoja. Because one of the things that is a reality is that if you don't have food in your home, you don't have food in your home. Your person will not help you. If your children are not going to get immunization or their school is dilapidated, they are not, books are not there. So I think the way to deal with the mtu wetu syndrome is to continue to sensitize each other that actually our problems are the same. There's no difference between a person from community A and a person from community B who are hungry. Hunger is the same. Yeah. Or who are dying because of lack of medicine or because of lack of certain other services. Once we start appreciating that, then we stop saying defending our thief, because mtu wetu is really a question of, we even start refusing handouts which cannot be explained, because we know very well this person earns only so much. The salaries, the beauty about transparency is that right now we know how much a member of parliament earns. Yeah, it's available, by the way, just in case you thought it's hidden. It's actually available, even the president and the like. We know how much they earn. Yet, if somebody is bringing 3 times, 2 times, 4 times what they earn in a month and bringing it in a weekend, hii pesa anatoa wapi? And saying this is my personal donation. So I think that's the way I would say that we start, demystifying, breaking that down, and refusing outright, because we are the ones who basically have encouraged it, and we encourage it at all levels, at family level, at even religious institutions level. We are happy to receive the money without asking any questions. But the more we start asking questions, but secondly, and the last one is to start insisting that there is service provision, that we do not want a check for a dispensary, we want a functional dispensary. The two are very different. We do not want a check to a school. We actually want a functional school. Because that means he does not bring you the money. He goes and pushes the Ministry of Education, which he is supposed to hold accountable, to make sure that school is working. Otherwise the other one is just a handout, and then all of us clap. Then on Monday, half the teachers are either not facilitated to do their work, or some of them are not available, as we know in some parts of this country, and the like. My last point is to say, this is our country. Whichever way we go, I was privileged to be trained and to be educated in a different country. And I saw how much effort, this is Germany, how much effort they put in after World War II to build their country. No one can build your country for you. This is our country. We are the only ones who can build it. And we will build it the way our style. If we choose not to build it, we cannot blame anyone. Even the money for debt, once it arrives here, it is in our hands. And therefore, let's take responsibility to be able to build the country we want to bequeath to the rest, to the coming generations, but also to ourselves. Thank you very much.
Great. Allow me to end it here for the live broadcast. In case you're just joining us right now, we've been having a town hall right at University of Nairobi on the effect of austerity measures on the services that you and I deserve as citizens of this country. And that's where we leave it at. Allow me to give a warm thank you to our panelists who've been here giving us all this value on this pertinent conversation. George Kiondo from Transparency International, Dr. Abraham Rugo from Bajeti Hub, and of course Diana Gishengo from TISA. This conversation, of course, continues online at NTV Kenya, at Brian George KE. My name is Brian George Otieno. It's been nice hosting you, and now I'm going to leave you to normal programming. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.